Hi, I'm Pastor Horton. Welcome to this week's message where we are joined by Miss Michelle Bader Ebersole. Welcome in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah. So we're very interested to have you. We've talked very briefly already, but already you brought up this idea that I personally hadn't thought of and haven't heard about. Um, but let's start with who you are, what your testimony is, your
Mm,
story.
yes. Well, most importantly, I'm a daughter of the king. That's the best identity that we can have.
Amen.
Um, but I kind of have to share my testimony to share kind of who I am now. I'll just tell you a little bit and then we'll get into it. So I have three kids that are 17, 19, and 21. I live in Washington, with my second husband, Joel. And we love outdoors, paddleboarding, hiking. And my biggest passion is helping widows. And that's because in 2020, after 17 years of being married to my husband, Luke, he passed away from cancer. It's a very long story, but I'll give you the brief version because I know we don't have super long. I want to get into the topic we're talking about. But we were married and he was 24. I mean, I was 24 and he was 25 when he was first diagnosed. He had a lump in his ankle that wouldn't go away, and they eventually did a biopsy and found out it was very rare bone cancer. And he went on to do chemo that didn't work and had his leg amputated. That was a life change. And then we had our first child, and then we had two more. And then 13 years later, the cancer came back in his lungs. And this time it was terminal. So he tried chemo again, didn't work. And he passed away May 23rd, 2020. And, that's a huge part of who I am today and what I do today. I was an elementary teacher before Luke died. And I actually went back for a little while, and it was confirmation to me that, nope, this isn't the path God has for me anymore. As I started receiving healing from God, I was like, I want to help other people. And basically, I also wanted to create what wasn't there for me and help other people, because most people think, like, when I thought widow, this is what I thought before I was widowed, like someone in their 80s, a gray bun, cats crawling all over, black dress. Like, literally, that's what I thought a widow was. But what I learned is widows are all ages, all walks of life, and that there are a lot of younger widows, like a lot, a huge community. I know thousands now. And
Yeah.
so I had no idea. But through my deepest pain, God met me in an unbelievable way. Like, I feel like that those first few months, especially being widowed, I was the closest I ever was to God, maybe in like the first year, because I had nothing else. Like, he was the one directing me in all my decisions. I had nobody to bounce it off of. I'm raising three teenagers as a solo mom and trying to figure out how to do life without my husband. I went from married to widowed in 1 second, and it was a completely different world. And I learned during that time how much God loves widows, how he has such a heart for widows. I learned that widows are mentioned 103 times in the Bible. I remember the first time I heard the verse that God is a defender of widows and a father to the fatherless. And I was like, that's me and my kids. Like, he really loves us. And I started to embrace that and realize, like, there's so much. God commands us to take care of widows, and what are we doing? And when I became a new widow, I checked every church in the area, my own church. Nobody had anything, no support groups. There was absolutely zero. There was no way for me to meet other widows. And I was like, this is not right. And my pastor had said, well, you can start one. Well, I was a few months into this. I had no energy to start anything. And so my first place I found connection was actually on Facebook. There's a lot of groups for widows. And so I started connecting with widows all over the world, and I actually connected with a widower, and we became good friends and decided to start a podcast because we were like, oh, these people need Jesus. They're turning into all the wrong things. And so we started our podcast, Widow Too Soon, in May of 21. And, it was great because we had the widower and he had little kids. I'm a widow with teenagers, and we were able to just walk through everything, but with a biblical perspective. And that went on for 3 years, and then he left. And now I do primarily an interview. Like, I interview widows from all walks of life, which is very interesting to hear, what helped them through it. And so I guess that's a lot, like, kind of about my testimony and what I'm passionate about, which is widows.
Well, I can tell that you're passionate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to see that.
Hmm.
Because I never want to stop somebody talking about their passion, and it's easy to tell that you are. I mean,
Hmm.
if
Yeah,
that's the short form, we're
that's
gonna
the
need a
short
lot
version.
longer episode if we're gonna talk the long version.
Yes, yes.
Um, I think it's interesting. Um, your story is not it's not too similar to my own mother, but it's
Mm,
fairly similar. Um, she ended up getting very sorry.
okay.
Um, man, she ended up having her husband arrested, and they ended
Mm,
up getting a divorce when I was 16. My brother, who's
mm,
my twin, was 16, and my sister was 14.
hmm.
And she was kind of thrown into that too.
Yeah.
Um, and that happened. We had, our dog of 3 or 4 years died about a month later. Our cat of like nine
Mm.
years died like another
Oh,
month
wow.
after that. And then a tree falls on our house.
Oh my goodness.
Like, yeah, it's kind of just one thing after another.
Yeah.
And um I think it's funny. I look back on it now, and that absolutely brought at least her closer to God
Hmm.
because the middle of all this grief, all this
Yeah.
terrible stuff, uh, she turned to our church and
Mm.
said, "Hey, I'm working on one salary right now, and I have a hole in my roof and drywall damage, and like, can somebody help?" And the
Hmm.
church, they brought in all these volunteer workers, they brought in
Great.
contractors. And so I think it's really incredible. It's not the same, she's not widowed, but it's incredible to see what churches can do when they have
Yes.
that
Oh,
kind of
definitely.
ministry in place.
Hmm. Yes, I've seen some great things. When Luke was sick, we really needed our fence fixed, and he also had a dream of having a dog. He never had one. And so we really wanted to. And our church stepped up. They bought the materials, they came, they put up the fence, and we were able to get this dog for Luke before he died. And so I definitely have seen amazing things from churches too, to support. The church that I go to, we just did this thing where we went into mostly widows to their houses and we fixed things and we spent time with them. We prayed with them. And I'm like, okay, this is what I love, like being able to help. So I know that churches are capable. I have just seen and heard too many awful stories of widows not being supported. And it makes me really, really sad that and really the only people that are helping widows, usually as far as like ministries and groups, are those who've been widowed. Where are the people that have, I've seen it one time. I got asked to speak at a retreat called the Good Grief Retreat. And the person who started it, she's not widowed. She's married, has like 9 kids, and just felt called to help widows. So that whole retreat, I was like, thank you. Like nobody else has ever done this. You don't have to be a widow to step up and help widows. And so yeah, it's a much, much needed thing. And I don't know, my heart breaks. I made this post I have about 13,000 people in my widowed community on Facebook. And
Wow.
I put out this post about I was allowed to at my church. Like I had my book, I gave them away to everyone widowed and was able to just really connect. And we're looking at getting my ministry. I've got a support program within the church. And I posted that and I said, church can be the loneliest place when you're widowed. And they all like agreed. And so many people were like, I walked away from the church. Nobody supported me. And I'm like, how are we being Jesus to these people if we're not helping them? And it's not just, it doesn't have to be a formal ministry, like anything. What we need is people supported not just in the first 3 months that their husband dies, but
Mhm.
6 months, a year, 2 years later to be there for them. And it just broke my heart when I saw how many widows were like, I didn't have any support. I didn't have anything. And yes, there are some that have had support, but how can we step up? How can we as a church be better? Um, I always challenge people to ask this is a simple thing to see if your church is supporting widows. All you have to do is ask the pastor, how does our church support widows? That's it. And find out and listen. We actually just started a new church, and I started going to a new church, and that was my question before we would attend, like, decide that was our church because I needed to know. And I found out we do a lot of things. because that's God's heart. Like his heart is so big for widows and orphans. And if we're not, and there's all these great programs, but what are we doing for the widows? I mean, and a lot of people, if they've never been in this world, they don't even think about it. But I remember sitting at church being so lonely, looking at the couples and the families, and you're like, where do I fit in? There's like divorce care for people who are divorced. There's all these programs, but where's my program? And like singles, but they're for like 20-year-olds. Where's the singles for the 40s? Like there was just like no place for me and just feeling, I mean, I would cry a lot at church because it was so lonely. And so I want to fix that. I want to find ways, and I'm working on that right now and finding ways to educate. And I have a couple widow friends, the three of us, like we are on this mission. Like, how can we change this? This is not what God wants. They both had really bad experiences and when they were widowed and getting no support from their church. And it's something that I'm very passionate about trying to change. And I have people say to me, why do you do this? Like, you're married again. Like, you don't have to be in this world. And I'm like, I know what it feels like. I know how awful it is to be completely alone. You have great friends, family, all of that. But if your church doesn't help you, I mean, you feel like you don't matter. And how sad to have someone who's already in grief walk away from the church because they're not feeling supported. And so I've done a couple things, and one of them I started about 3 years ago. I started a nonprofit called Widow Goals, which our whole thing is widows helping widows not only survive but thrive. And we get together once a month. Every single month we're rotating houses, and now we have this in 30 other cities. I've taught other people how to do
Wow.
it. Yeah, I just opened up applications and had all these people apply, and I just teach them what I do. I have training videos and things like that. And so that's helping, but that's not within the church. That's just people getting together. But what I'm specifically doing now is I have a book, Widow Goals, Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse. And then I created a workbook with places for prayers and deeper questions and things like that. And then I created a leader's guide. So if there's someone they don't have a widow to lead it in your church, anyone could pick up the leader's guide, and it tells you exactly what to do and what to say. And it's an 11-week support program that I am working hard to get in churches across the world, because there is nothing that I know of that is specific to widows. There's Grief Share, which is a great program, but a lot of widows have given me the feedback that they don't feel like it's their place because it's all different grief. And so
Yeah.
and also, this is for widowers. When I say widows, it usually means both widows and
Yeah.
widowers to have a place, because there's a lot of men who need help as well, who are lost.
Yeah. Um, I'm a big advocate for men's mental health, and I think
Yeah.
that's incredible that you're including them.
Yes.
Because a lot of the time when people aren't forgotten about in their mental health, I don't want to create a stigma or generalize, but a lot of the time the men are forgotten even
Hmm.
after people come
Yes,
back, and it's
that is
terrible.
true.
I
Hmm.
was one of them. And
Oh,
for the same reason, people have asked you, why do you stay in this world
yeah.
when you're married again?
Hmm.
I was depressed to the point where I wanted to take my own life.
Mm.
And I now advocate for other people and I help them through that because I know what it's like.
Yes, you do.
Why,
Hmm.
like, God equipped me. He used that pain that I went through so that I could help minister to others while they're going through it.
Hmm.
Because it's one thing to walk up to somebody and say, hey, it'll be okay.
Right.
But if somebody had done that to me when I was at that place of my life, I probably might have punched them in the face
Hmm.
because that's not what I want to hear.
Right.
And so now I have an opportunity to walk to these people and say, hey, I've been where you are. This is what helped me. How
Hmm.
can I support you?
Right. That's
And
good.
that's it.
That's really good.
Now, I want to ask, you said, anybody can lead one of these groups.
Hmm.
Is there something past the 11 weeks that it's set up for? Could this be turned into like a life group, for
Yeah,
instance?
definitely. I feel like during the 11 weeks, there's going to be bonds that are created, that could continue where you could study something else. as well. But it's going to take you through all of these different pieces of grief. So they're goals, and they're all there's scripture in every single chapter, but they're things like how to re-enter social situations. There's have an eternal perspective, which is really important. There's 30 different things. Get out of bed, which is a big thing in the beginning, just trying to get out of bed. Don't be surprised by anxiety, all kinds of topics. And so they're able to take these topics and discuss them, in within their groups and have these reflection questions, and learn how to move through grief. And there's a lot of grief education too, which is this is my biggest thing I like to share with people is that there aren't actually stages you have to go through in grief.
Mm.
So Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross created those for those dying, not for those grieving. And so many people have mixed them up. I thought so in the beginning, but what it did for me was when I learned that we don't have to go through them, it gave me relief. And so we talk about things like that in the book, just giving like basic grief education, because a lot of people don't know. But yeah, this could, be turned into where you just get together and have fun too. Because that's
Yeah.
what my other group is. That's what my nonprofit is. We did Friendsgiving at my house. We had 20 people over the other night. We had widows in their 30s all the way to their 80s and everywhere in between. And there was just this common bond of we all get it. Like we've all been through the pain of losing a spouse. And so, yeah, I believe that the program could continue in whatever way, the leader saw fit. And yeah, I do think, ideally, if you have a seasoned widow in your church, that would be the best because they can be like, I went through this. But if you don't, like, I don't want that to stop churches. That's why I made a leader's guide because I was like, I want anybody to be able to do this because what support are we giving our widows?
Yeah. I think again with that, getting together and there was just that sense of everybody understood. Like
Yes.
that is powerful. You'll
Hmm.
find it in a lot of groups. And, my church, to my knowledge, I'll have to look into it and ask that question, but I
Yeah,
don't believe that they have a dedicated widower ministry.
probably not.
And part of the reason why I ask about that is like I, a 21-year-old, have never been married, have never been widowed, or yeah, widowed.
Yeah, you
Um,
said it correctly.
yeah. And like I don't necessarily think that I would have the experience necessary to lead that, which is why it's kind of great that you have this leader guide,
Yeah.
because the way I could see it going is I'm there to start
Yeah,
and to facilitate in the beginning,
exactly. Yeah,
but bring somebody alongside me to lead, to step into that role.
exactly. Yes. Yeah, that's kind of the vision that it could be, yeah, anyone who can do that, even if they don't have the life experience. Because not every church has, they might have widows, but not widows who are in a place to lead a group. So if they don't, they can just start this with by using the guide. Like we have prompts on what to say, even like prayers if you're not sure what to pray. And but there's freedom, of course, to do what you want with it. But I have a vision. I believe God gave me this as my mission, like to go and to help people and help educate churches because I know that most churches they have the right heart, they just if they haven't really experienced it and no one in leadership has really experienced this, they might not even be aware, even though the Bible talks about widows 103 times. For some reason, churches are not doing much about this.
Yeah. And it's honestly baffling to think, like I've been in the church for a long time. I never thought about it
Hmm.
until we started this interview and started talking about it. I never thought about it. And now
Yeah, it's
that's going to be
awesome.
on the forefront of my mind. I'm meeting with the pastors tomorrow,
Yes.
and I'm going to bring up with them, hey, do we have this? Can we work to set something up for this?
Yes. Yes,
Because it's
exactly.
important.
It's really important because it's so hard to explain how horrible that time period is, but it's when you're newly widowed, it is very, very, very difficult. And having a supportive church is so important. Whether it's a support program like this or there's something else that people put in place. Like I just want widows to be supported, and to be remembered on the hard days. So the hardest days are the anniversary, the death anniversary, your would-be anniversary, like your wedding anniversary, and your birthday. So I created something. So I'll share with you my vision about what I want to do. I created something that I collect emails and those dates. And so I have an automated system where I've created prayers and a video and I pray for them and I send it to them on those days. And I have gotten so much amazing feedback. Like nobody else remembered. Thank you. So here's my vision. My husband Joel actually helped me think of this. So now we put another place on this form for their church and their church contact. And what if we could somehow, whether we can do it automated or I have to call, I don't know, we could call someone from the church a week before those big dates or email them or something and let them know, hey, here's a widow in your church. She let us know this is her date. So you could go and support her. Now, my fear
Yes.
with that is what if the widow puts that information and the church doesn't follow through? That's my fear. And what if I call them and tell them and they still don't do anything? What would that do to the widow's heart? But you know what? God did not give us a spirit of fear. I shouldn't live in that fear.
No.
You
I
know.
mean, you say that, and my answer to that is it shows the widow her place in that church's heart.
Yeah.
Because if she's willing to go out of her way to give that opportunity to them, but they don't follow through and they don't support her, that doesn't say
That's
anything about her. It says everything about the church.
true.
And that, in my opinion, is probably the best reason to reevaluate your church home.
Exactly. I had a situation, and that's why I left my last church. I didn't feel like they were supporting widows, and I just couldn't be part of it. And that's why I went to this other church and asked how. And I was like, okay, good. I can be at this church because
Yeah.
we're supporting widows, because that's so near and dear to my heart. And I want to see this change. And that's actually a big reason why I'm doing a lot of podcasts right now, because I just want to educate people, and people like yourself hadn't thought of it. Doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, just hadn't thought of it. And
Yeah.
so I want to help get the word out that we need to be doing this in churches and really making those widows, and that means widowers as well, feel loved and supported. Because when your spouse dies, it changes everything. Like the way you eat, the way you like everything changes in your whole life. And we need to have support. And, I have a friend who started a nonprofit. She's also widowed, and she, calls it honey dudes. I think it's the greatest idea, like a honey do list, but honey dudes. So if there's a widow, they go on there and they fill out their need. Like, I need my grass mowed. I need, the things their husband used to do. And then volunteers from the church and in the area, they come and they do it. I'm like, that is beautiful. We need to do that in every church. We
Yeah.
need to have something like that, because when you're widowed and you're a person, especially women, your guy did all the things, and then I had my dad and my brother, so I had called them all the time, but a lot of people don't, especially older widows.
Yeah.
And so, how are we going to help them? We need some program. I'd love to maybe develop something like that. Maybe ask her how she did it and put it in, like, try to get that in churches everywhere as well, so that there's some kind of program. Um, it's just like, this is God's heart. So why are we lacking this ministry? I don't know. I
Yeah.
still don't know why.
Well, we are running short on time, but I have to ask, where can people find your book?
Mm. Yes, that's on Amazon. Just search for Widow Goals, Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse, or just search Widow Goals. And then also this program we're talking about, if you go to widowgoals.org/support program. I even made a video. It's made for churches. Like, send this to your church. It tells them everything about the program and the things we were talking about. And if they purchase in bulk, they can get a discount. And so
Ooh.
that's the best way to do it. It's kind of a win-win. I'm able to, if they contact me directly, give them a discount and get it into more churches. I don't want there to be obstacles. They get 25% off the books. So they can do that. And if anyone has any questions, they can email me, Michelle@widowgoals.org.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank you.
giving your time. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Yes.
Again, anybody who wants any of that information or to purchase that book, I will have all of that linked on the website as well as in the description of this episode. Have a wonderful week and God bless.